Do you see the Beatles going on like they are at the moment for a long time in the future, or do you see a split very soon?
Completely, no, we'll never go, or I can't say never, but I mean, we won't go our separate ways after this album, and we'll always be tied up with each other in some way, you know, because we've signed a lot of papers. It says we stay together for 20 years or something.
You lived in each other's pockets, didn't you? I mean, it was like being a family.
Oh, he's always lived in mine.
But you have family rows. I mean, what were the
Yeah,
main...
we do. We have terrible rows.
What was the main cause of your squabbles in the early days?
Oh, I don't remember.
I'll leave that one up to you,
any-
George.
I don't remember any squabbles.
You don't remember anything, do you?
No. Instant amnesia.
No, we didn't get along. We were four guys. We had rows. It never got in the way of the music, no matter how bad the row was. Once the count-in, we all gave our best.
You know, there's that famous old saying, you always hurt the one you love. And we all love each other, and we all know that, but we still sort of hurt each other occasionally, you know, where we just misunderstand each other. And we go off, you know, and it builds up to something bigger than it ever was. And then we have to come down to it and get it over with, you know, and sort it out. And so we're still really very close people.
I think, you know, as guys, we gave each other everything. And we did become, I'm an only child, I have three brothers. Sure. I had three solid brothers who loved me, I felt it, protected me in many ways, and supported me in a lot of other ways.
You felt when those three guys were all together, they had bonded somehow.
That was the White Album.
Right. That's where you walked out of the Beatles.
No,
you were like, hey, fuck you guys.
I only went out because I did feel like it was, you know, we'd done Pepper and that was fine. And we were trying to be a band again, which I loved.
Right.
And then I'm there in the studio and it's like, I don't feel good. I don't feel part of it.
And so I thought, like at the time,
it wasn't working in the studio. It was just not working. And I was looking at myself and I thought, this is just not happening. And I went to John's house, my house, he was living in my house. And I banged on the door, I said, come in, and I said,
well, you three are really close, man, and, you know, I just feel left out. And he said, I thought it was you three. So I thought, things are getting crazy. So I went over to Paul and I said, you three are really close, and I feel left out. And he said, I thought it was you three.
Yeah. Is that the part of the horror of being in the great part of being in a band is you have your mates and, you know.
I love being
great.
in a band. I always have.
But the worst is the paranoia and fear.
Well, you don't have it every day. And,
right.
You know, the great thing, you know, then I came back and they were sending faxes to me, come on home.
Right.
And George had the studio full of flowers. That was great.
I love the White Album because we were back being a band after.
And then we did Yeah Blues in a room about 8 foot square. And we were like this rock band again. So we started playing more like a band after the downtime we had on Pepper.
According to George, according to John, it was all over by Let It Be. By the time Let It Be was being filmed and recorded, according to George and according to John,
it was. But that's because George left. George left on Let It Be. We were very possessive of each other, you know. The four of us had been through a lot together and we were very close most of the time. We weren't close all the time. And it went round, you know, I'd be close with John, I'd be close with George, I'd be close with Paul, they'd be close, John and I and George would be close, Paul, John and George would be, you know, it went round in a lot of circles. But most of the time, four of us were very close. And I don't know, I thought we were very possessive of each other in a way, you know, not like, you know, a mother-son thing, you know, but just with ourselves. And we didn't like strangers coming in too much. And the wives and the girlfriends never came to the studio. That was where we were together. I think that's one of them. Also, I think the other one is that George was getting a lot of independence for himself in those days. He was writing more. He wanted things to go his way. Where when we first started, they basically went John and Paul's way. You know, because they were the writers, And they'd say, you know, this is the song. I would play as creatively as I could, and they would say, can you do this? But sometimes I'd have 3 people telling me how to do it, and I'd play it the only way I could, and it seemed to work, you know, because the 3 frustrated drummers I used to have in my band, or in the band, because they all wanted to play drums. George was finding his independence, and he wouldn't be dominated as much by Paul as he was, because Paul would, in the end, wanted to, like, point out the solo to George. I think that was another factor, because George left with a big row with Paul, because Paul, like, wanted to point out how to play, because it was his song, you see, which that's how it was earlier on. So, and also, you know, well, we were all married by then, you know, the family, and everyone wanted to do different things, and I wanted to be in movies and stuff.
Which I think is a natural thing, you know, suddenly we've got lives and I've got children, and, you know, the effort that we put in, because we worked really hard, we're starting to pale a little.
We were growing up. You know, we were these young kids, and we were playing, and then we suddenly became the Beatles, and we lost our freedom, and as George says, we lost our nervous systems. So
When the Beatles broke up,
yeah, back to them.
you got to be in a panic, because you're saying, why the hell are we breaking up? We got the best thing in the world here. You're an easygoing
we were
guy.
breaking up because it wasn't working. The situation between us wasn't working. We weren't putting the energy in. You know, just in my own case, I had a couple of kids now, and I didn't want to spend all that time in the studio.
I blame Yoko.
Well, you blame who the hell?
I'm blaming Yoko for this.
Okay.
I think they were all Bailey.
Blame me, Howard.
I blame you, Ringo.
Okay, it was my fault. I broke up the Beatles.
Did you want the group to break up? Were you ready for it?
I think we were all ready in a way, because it wasn't as much fun as it used to be. It was okay while we got in the studio for a while, and then, you know, there would be some bickering. And nobody wanted to put in the time, including myself. You know, no one wanted to put in the time and energy that it took later on. You know, we may have done the first album in 12 hours, but the last ones were taking months. And, you know, no one really wanted to put in that time and energy. So it was sort of just like a natural falling apart, really.
and then, you know, I was married, and I had kids, and, you know, John wanted to do this, and, you know, it just... Life changes, and that was one of them. I mean, you know, it's like everybody wants the good things to go on. But,
Sure.
you know, you break up. You have other things to do.
Yeah.
I couldn't put my finger on one thing why we broke up. It was time, and we were spreading out, you know. Well, they were spreading out more than I was. I would have stayed with the band.
Was it hardest, would you say, on you personally at the time?
I would say that, yeah. I think it was, you know, it was rough on all of us in many ways, because suddenly we didn't have a job. You know what I mean? It was like we knew what we were doing, like you guys. You get up every morning, you come here, you know what's happening.
Well, it was traumatic, because I had this steady job, and suddenly I was sitting in the garden, and there was nothing to get up for. There was nowhere to go. I mean, it was like, you know, the end of that, and hanging out with my 3 brothers. So, you know, you have to take a moment to look inside and say, what happened? Well, what I did.
When the Beatles decided to stop working together, recording together, what was it a real...
Well, I do. No, at that time I didn't know where it was going to go. And I didn't do anything for a long time. I just sat around and said, what am I going to do? So, I mean, I had no great plan then. You know, I know what you're saying, because, you know, it was Lennon and McCartney. They were the major writers anyway, and they were producing, and I was just like playing the kid.
At that point, at Let It Be, you were ready to go your own way too.
Yeah, because...
For the reasons you've explained, and others that...
Because the other 3 were anyway, so what am I holding together? You know? But it would have been easier for me if we'd have come back to, like, the 4 of us situation, all for one for all, instead of all for, you know, all for themselves.
What was it like for you musically in the early years after the Beatles split up? Was it easy for you to establish yourself as a musical identity outside of the Beatles?
No, I had no identity outside of it, really, for myself. I mean, I was, you know, it was the Beatles, I was in the Beatles, I was one of them, and that's what I did. And suddenly we weren't doing that, so I really had to think about what I wanted to do, and, you know, where would I take my musical career, or any career.
And so it took a while, you know, for the dust to settle that finally it's over.
Do you think it's been tougher for you as a solo artist because you have a reputation for being a kind of light-hearted guy?
I don't think so, really. I mean, if we look at the record from, you know, after the split up, you know, I was the biggest selling artist there for a couple of years.
Let me ask you, how much of your success do you feel can be attributed to the fact that you were a member of the Beatles?
50%. At least 50%. You know? But the rest is you still have to do the job in the end, you know. I mean, I sell records, and it doesn't matter if I've been in the Beatles or not. If they don't like the record out there, they won't buy it, you know. It doesn't matter how much we plug it or do anything. But I do tend to get, you know, like plays on my stuff where maybe if you made a record you couldn't because I'm Ringo, you know. He will tend to put me on the playlist, or at least check me out, because they get so many records a week, you know, and if they see it's Tommy Ford, you know, they're going to say, well, and mine, I mean, in all honesty, I think they would play mine till they check that out first, if they didn't know Danny and the Peglegs, you know.
You said once that when you're number one, it's hard to accept anything else, is it?
Yeah, as an individual, you know, the notoriety and the publicity and everything else will never be as big as the Beatles.
And you don't say to yourself, someday by myself,
No,
boy.
not anymore.
What can you do, or maybe you can't, so that finally you can be you and not the Beatle?
I'll never be able.
So it gave us a lot, and we lost a lot, which is always the way.
And it must be a good feeling to know that you were...
I want to be me, but I'm me and part of that. I'm used to it now, I don't know.
Talking about the weight of that legacy, do you feel it any more acutely these days? Has it changed at all or evolved over the years?
Yeah, but I don't think it's a weight. It's how it is in my personal life, but the music carries on. And that's what it's about. You know, yeah, because of that we have to put up with certain things, but that's part of life.